how Europe's replacing planes with trains. Okay, so if you haven't been on the channel for a while, the first video that I released on the channel was a reaction to high-speed trains, which I had never seen in my entire life before that video. I mean, like maybe passing by occasionally somewhere, but I never really investigated high-speed trains. It's just not a thing here in the US. So when I saw this recommendation come in of how Europe's replacing planes with trains, I'm really curious. It's from the channel Versed. It's about 2 years old, so I don't know if the trains have replaced the planes yet completely. 2 years is a good amount of time. Maybe they've done it. I'm totally kidding. All right, enough of the jokes. Let's just hop in and see what we got going on here. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't been watching me since I was reacting to trains 4+ months ago, my name is Jacob. I'm an American just fascinated with Europe and trying to figure out as much as I possibly can about the continent and all the countries and cultures. So without further ado, let's dive in.
This is the Berlin-Palermo Railway Axis, a planned 2,200 kilometer long high-speed rail line between Berlin and Palermo. It will be priority project number 1 of 30 from the newly updated Trans-European Transport Network Plan, which is part of a grand vision by the EU Green Deal to make all scheduled travel of 500 kilometers or less carbon neutral by 2030 and reduce transport emissions by 90% by 2050. The idea is that if Europe can create a network of modern, super-fast and comfortable trains going between every major city and member states, like this, then it can replace planes for these short to medium distance travel times. Trains, particularly electric passenger trains, are obviously the way to go for this solution. Even accounting for use of fossil fuels in power generation, trains average about a fifth of the greenhouse gas emissions per passenger kilometer of airplanes and less than half that of buses.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that trains are like really efficient in their energy consumption, right? Especially electric. All of our trains are like, I don't know if they run on diesel, or I would imagine probably diesel, but you don't really see too many electric trains. No, maybe down in Nashville, not too close. I have a train track not too far away, but have never had any need to ride the train, but I want to try it out.
For example, Lisbon to Madrid, separated by 624 kilometers. A flight would emit 109 kilograms of CO2, while rail only 23. That's an insane 474% difference.
Massive.
Yet somehow there's no direct train between the two adjacent capitals. So while a plane would just take an hour and 30 minutes of travel, the 3 connecting train journeys would take around 9 hours. This is where the Madrid-Extremadura high-speed rail line will come in, linking Madrid and Badajoz, a city close to the Portuguese border. It will eventually be expanded to connect to Lisbon by 2030 via connections to Alvas and Evora. A Madrid-Lisbon line by high-speed rail would cut the current 9-hour train ride to just 2.5, which would actually be shorter than flying when you take into account all the driving and waiting that comes with airports. We've seen this pan out with other lines already.
Gosh, having to wait in an airport. I would imagine your guys' airports are very similar to ours. Like you have to show up like 2 hours early and then of course try and navigate through the entire airport, and then when you get off your plane you have to sit inside the plane for like 30 minutes just parked on the runway before you can actually get off. That always drives me nuts.
The Eurostar carried nearly 80% of traffic from London to Brussels and Paris in 2019, while flights between Milan and Rome fell by more than half after a high-speed rail line opened in 2007. Now, while this is the main goal, replacing planes, it's also just about connecting Europe overall by train and giving more options for travel, regardless.
Look at all
that. For
that.
example, with the main line for Europe, it'll be going from Paris to Bratislava.
Hey, wait, hold up. Is there a train that goes under the English Channel? I had no idea. I mean, that's not a bridge, right? It doesn't go over. Does it go under the water or does it go over it? This may be a dumb question, but I'm sorry, I'm not from England and I just learned about trains. But there clearly is a line that is going across the English Channel or under it. Maybe these green lines and yellow and no, these are all above ground. Why would they be underground? All right, never mind. Stupid thought. Let's keep going.
That's a distance of 1,338 kilometers, which doesn't really make sense by train, but it means it'll be connecting big cities like Strasbourg, Stuttgart, Munich, and Vienna along the way, crucial for maintaining being an alternative to planes for any journey whatsoever. It's the same with the Rail Baltica, which is priority project number 27. The 870 kilometer line will go from Warsaw all the way up to
Wait a second. Are they doing all of these before 2030? One of these three kind of 18 railway projects remixed. I wonder if they're doing all of these I know he said that they were trying to get the big one done by 2030. They try and do all these. That's a lot of work. That might provide like a lot of jobs though. That's really
Project
good.
number 27. The 870-kilometer line will go from Warsaw all the way up to Tallinn, linking the capital cities of Baltic nations Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to the rest of Europe by the way of the Polish capital by 2030. This is exactly what the Trans-European rail networks intend to do: connect Europe. The better European cities are connected by rail, the easier it is to move away from high-polluting transport modes such as aviation and cars. But even further, people need to be more incentivized to use rail. 17 of the 20 most frequented air routes in Europe are for distances less than 700 kilometers. In theory, almost all of these journeys could be shifted to rail. Now, don't get me wrong, the EU already has over 200,000 kilometers of rail infrastructure across the bloc, and many of its countries have some of the best rail systems in the world. But it's actually not enough right now. I mean, only 11,000 kilometers of these tracks facilitate high-speed rail, and as a result, it isn't used as much as it could be, which I know sounds crazy to say about European countries considering how far ahead they are in rail ridership than almost everywhere else. But while the number of passenger kilometers traveled on the EU's railways rose from 340 billion in 2001 to 413 billion in 2018, rail's overall share of journeys has barely moved, increasing from 6.7% to 7%. In the same period, air travel's share rose from 6.1% to 9.6% of all European journeys by passenger kilometers. Even in the most train-happy countries such as Austria and the Netherlands, for example, the figures are just 13% and 11%.
It's got to be because of speed, right? Like if you're taking I think he said that there is no train that goes from Poland down to Romania or Italy at the moment, right? He said that was going to be the first one that went up to the capital in Poland. Is Warsaw? Yeah, Warsaw is the capital. I'm just wondering, are people just flying because your guys' flights are so cheap and you get there a little bit quicker? I don't know. Like when I go to Europe, I want to take trains for the most part if I can. I know. Oh, now that I think about it, you guys did say that my trip would probably have to be a little bit longer because some of the train rides can take quite a bit of time for them to connect all the way where you're trying to go. So
there's a few reasons for this, but I believe most of them stem from this. High-speed rail links haven't truly been prioritized in all of Europe, let alone cross-border ones. In 2018, the European Commission found that out of 365 cross-border rail links that had once existed, 149 were non-operational. You see, rail is the form of transport that requires possibly the most coordination, and on a continent split into dozens of countries, there's bound to be tons of problems. Compatibility is a perfect example of this. Europe may have thousands of rail lines, but they're not all created equally. Europe's electric railways use 4 different voltage levels, while signaling and safety systems are even worse, given almost every country initially had its own. Even the tracks themselves vary. For example, the Baltic countries use Russia's wider gauge, and Spain and Portugal have one of their own. The European Rail Agency has been gradually enforcing common specifications since 1996, but there's still a long way to go in adjusting the current ones or just creating new tracks. But besides that, even when international high-speed lines have been built, often at enormous cost, national loyalties, clashing regulations, and bureaucratic
why do you use American dollar B-roll there?
Often at enormous cost, national loyalties, clashing regulations, and bureaucratic hurdles lurking around at pretty much every corner are preventing these routes from fulfilling their potential. The lack of unification also goes beyond the physical world and reaches the digital realms of ticket purchasing sites. Although some privately owned websites already facilitate the sale of cross-border train tickets, there's not even a single united ticketing system yet. The process usually requires customers to go through different national rail websites. Even after the purchase, passengers traveling on various national companies are not guaranteed their connection if the first train from a different railway company is running late. Of course, these things will eventually be fixed, but as a result, currently, you basically end up with countries like Spain and France that have extensive national railway networks, such as the AVE and TGV, yet have remained largely focused on domestic markets for decades. Cross-border trips are basically just a side business and nuisance to them, so going from one country to the other usually means creeping along some old-fashioned tracks. Then there's the financial aspect that pretty much goes hand in hand with this problem. When I said these high-speed lines have been built at an enormous cost, I wasn't exaggerating in the slightest. Despite the fact the EU is budgeting a total of $100 billion worth of rail from 2021 to 2027, it's not close to being enough when high-speed tracks can cost more than $42 million per kilometer. On most routes,
42 million, did he say dollars or euros?
High-speed tracks can cost more than $42 million per kilometer.
$42 million per kilometer? That sounds absolutely crazy. Doesn't that sound crazy? $42 million per kilometer is like hundreds, trillions of dollars to be able to. All right, let's keep going.
On most routes, countries would actually be better off improving their conventional networks according to the European Court of Auditors. As a result, high-speed rail tickets typically cost far more than a budget airfare on the same route, which again contributes to not enough people using rail. A 2019 climate survey of almost 30,000 people by the European Investment Bank found that 62% of Europeans support a ban on short-haul flights, with the main obstacle being prices. So the more attractive and easy-to-use rail services are, the more likely it is that people will want to switch.
I mean, if you're removing the carbon emission, like, you know, trying to be more cognizant of our carbon footprint, planes really are a much better option, right? I mean, because you don't have as much maintenance to do because you don't have tracks in the air. You just fly. All these railways, I'm sure that they're going to have to be maintained. It just seems like really, really expensive. I'm not saying it's right or wrong here or there. I'm not involved in it at all. It just seems like this would be a really, really expensive undertaking for them to be adding even more railways. And he said that the prices are already kind of expensive. I don't know though. I watched, it was like a train trip from, where was that? I think it was from Italy to Switzerland. It was like, what was that? I did a video on it. I'll try and link it right here if you guys want to watch it. But I think that plane or that train ticket was like $26 or something. I don't know. I get such like contradictory like information sometimes on all this content that I watch.
More attractive and easy to use rail services are, the more likely it is that people will want to.
Oh, let me know what you guys think though. Or like, are you for more trains, or you were like, hey, I'd rather just fly? I'm kind of curious. I want to know the actual citizens of your guys', you know, it's so hard to say. I want to say the citizens of Europe so bad. But I'll just get absolutely destroyed in the comment of your guys' countries.
Which, we know this, because we've seen the effects of cheap public transport. If you take, for example, the €9 ticket that Germany offered during the summer of 2022, in which passengers could travel for €9 per month on local and regional transport in all of Germany. It was a wild success. Over 52 million tickets were sold over the 3-month period and saved 1.8 million tons of CO2, almost as much as a 130 km/h speed limit on the autobahns would achieve in an entire year. Now, of course, this €9 ticket didn't include high-speed
until a volcano erupts.
Rail, but one could imagine that if it did, the results would be even more insane. Couple this with the fact that the EU plans to double their high-speed rail traffic by 2030 and triple it by 2050, there can really be a set pathway to becoming the world's first carbon-neutral continent by 2050, as the EU aims to do. So what's happening now, besides all these multi-year projects currently being built and targets being set? Well, even if the EU is decades off from reaching its targets, they're still addressing the problems without having a fully connected high-speed rail system being ready. A growing number of countries have plans to phase out short-haul flights that can be completed by train in a given time frame, and France has recently become the world's first major economy to do so, enacting a nationwide ban on short-haul domestic flights on routes where train journeys of 2.5 hours or less exist as an alternative. Well, kinda. As a first step, flights will be prohibited on just 3 routes from Paris's secondary airport, Orly to Bordeaux.
I don't know if I like that. The American in me is starting to come out. It's like a werewolf. I can't stop it. That's interesting. They're going to restrict people from flying short distances and force them to take trains. All right. You know, I got to see if I can find a video on energy production throughout Europe and how green that is. I'm all for like carbon neutral everywhere in the entire world. China's doing a lot, I think, with solar right now. They're doing a lot, but they also do a lot of polluting. But, I think we got to focus on getting the energy carbon neutral before you try doing the trains, because the trains are electric and they're still powered by energy, which is produced through, traditional methods of energy. I know you guys do a lot more of green energy in Europe than we do, but I know it's not 100%. I thought I read something as well that, what was it when the Ukraine and Russia war kind of broke out? There was an issue with some of the energy that was being sold from Russia to somewhere. I don't know. Maybe you guys know. Let me know in the comments. I'm rambling, by the way. Sorry.
Lyon and Nantes, and as rail improves, so will the amount of banned flights. There has also been a rise of the air rail connections, meaning instead of a traveler making the usual dash from flight to flight, a small but growing number connect to or from a train for one leg of their journeys. It's again sort of a band-aid on the problem, but it's something. That's the thing though, no one policy is going to solve the whole problem. You get 0.5% here, 0.1% there, but when you do things bit by bit, the result adds up. That is the way for the EU reaching its climate goals and finally changing from no more than a patchwork of national systems to a transport-united Europe.
All right. That was very interesting. I feel like I have more questions than I did when the video started, and I'm going to investigate those. I want to kind of check out some of the energy production throughout Europe. Nobody's ever recommended that, and I don't know if anyone's going to watch it, but as I do with all my videos is you guys make recommendations. I also go scour through and look at stuff, and, you know, I kind of check out the things that I'm interested in. And of course, I do the things you guys are as well. Even if it's not the top of my list, I'll still hit them. But all right. I had too much coffee today. I'm going to go ahead and check out. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.